It's really, really heavy. It's probably one of the scariest big waves I've ever encountered.
The idea of just the world's biggest wave, it brings a lot of emotions out.
I just split them up because they're on the edge of the jet ski, and I held them side to side, and I was like, guys, it's not worth it.
He's just face down, and the minutes are going by, and
12-foot backwash wave comes behind him, launches them like SpaceX. They went to the moon. So every time I go there and I'm on the plane, I'm looking out the window and I'm going, I hope this isn't my last plane ride.
I had to let a little off. Yeah, I had to cut a bill off. Yeah, but if we be real though.
Let's talk about Nazaré. This is an episode I've been wanting to do forever because there's just so much to talk about. All the stories, the history, the culture there is so rich, and it's just such an insane place. So I think a cool place to start would be, where did you first hear about this crazy wave?
The first time I ever heard of Nazaré was I was in France, actually, in La Torche, and I was actually with Garrett McNamara. This might have been 2000 and maybe 11. So right around the time when he first went. And I think he had already surfed there. And of course, I think I've heard of it. I actually had heard of it up to that point. But this was like the first time I got an in-depth idea of what it actually was. Because up to that point, it just seemed like a giant avalanching mountain. You know, there was no photos of the cliff yet. It was just Garrett on a giant wave. And he saw a swell coming. It was about this time of year, and he's like, do you want to go tow? And at the time, I wasn't really ready for that in big wave surfing. I had just started surfing big waves and pushing myself in that arena. And so I declined, and it ended up being some biblical swell where, you know, they broke the proverbial 100-foot wave. And it was definitely the biggest waves I think ever ridden up to that point, just because it was the first time people were really pushing in Nazaré. And he had to, I think he got Kaylee Mamala, Hawaiian big wave surfer, to go with him. But he was with me in France and trying to get me to go. And I just, wasn't ready for it. In hindsight, of course, I was like, dang, I wish I would have gone. I could have been one of the first people to ever go there. But where I was at as a kid, I had the mental fortitude to take on that wave, I definitely wasn't ready. So it's okay that I waited a couple more years.
Yeah, it was like, at that time, I remember you'd see like the odd Instagram post, and I think one of those first big swells, you know, you have GMAC and Andrew Cotton posting some stuff, and you're like, it was just so mysterious. You see these just giant towering peaks, but you couldn't tell how steep it was, how far out it broke, like you said, and it was just like, it was not an established big wave at all. It was like, it kind of seemed like it came out of nowhere. And, you know, as we come to find out later, it's in like an actual town. Like, it's not some far-flung place you have to go 10 hours by boat to get to. Like, this is literally like in civilization, and there's just this giant wave. And how do you think it went unnoticed for so many years, where it was only, when did they first surf it again? 2011, was it?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I think when the first time anyone ever surfed it, which was pretty much Garrett and his friends, they were the first ones to do it when it was really big. It actually was somewhere that bodyboarders would go when it was smaller, and it's an insane small wave. It's arguably a better small wave than it is big wave. And, you know, when the wave first came out, everyone thought, geez, this wave's just a big mush burger. It's not really big wave surfing. Until you go there for yourself, it's really, really heavy. It's probably one of the scariest big waves I've ever encountered, that I ever even go and surf, because there's really no safe zone. If you're riding a wave, you're in the maelstrom of that white water. You're butted up against this 250-foot cliff. The boils are just insane. You go so fast on the wave, and there's so much sand in the water. My painted on logos and even stickers get sanded down. Basically, once a season, everyone changes their impellers that go within the Sea-Doos, because the sand gets worn off because the RPM's going so fast. It just eats away at those impellers and make them small. And you want brand new ones to get the maximum bite. But what makes that wave what it is that trench. It's the deepest trench in all of Europe, 10,000 feet deep, if you could believe that. So you have the wave to the right that's 80 feet, and over to the left, it's just flat ocean because it's 10,000 feet deep. And that's why they built a harbor there before they even realized that, this place was a big wave. I mean, most big waves with harbors near it there's the reason. It's just the trench. It pulls all that swell, and maybe out in the ocean, what is 20-second interval, it almost turns to 24-second interval, and it just grows. And that 20-second interval between the two big waves shortens as it hits that ledge right where the wave is breaking along that cliff, and the interval goes down to sometimes 9 seconds. So all that energy has to go somewhere, and the only place it can go is vertically, and it goes into these big A-frames, maybe some of the world's biggest A-frames on the right day. But I remember when I first showed up there, it was a ghost town. It was borderline sad. It was a town that was dying. It was a fishing village, but it wasn't maintaining, what it was in the past because the world around it was moving on. And from that first time that I went, and it was, I think 2017 was my first trip, that place completely did a 180. You used to be able to drive up to the cliff, check the waves, not see a soul pretty much all day. And now you have to park like 2 miles away or a couple kilometers away in order to just walk down the cliff, and you got to like buy tickets, and it's radical. It's a radical change, but the town is thriving now. But back then it was like, it made it even more scary to surf that wave because it felt like you were in a ghost town, and there was, empty buildings everywhere, and it was only old people, and these old people had the stories, and whether all of them were true or not, I'm not sure, but there was some crazy stories that I heard when I would go and ask them. And for the longest time, it was illegal to go to Praia de Norte, which is the beach that's just up from Nazaré where the wave actually breaks. It was illegal to actually go on the beach because so many people would get swept off and drown because it was so violent.
It is crazy just thinking about it. Is so well set up for what big wave surfing is. You have the warehouses, the harbor's right there. There's the town, there's place to stay. And it still kind of boggles my mind that it just kind of, like I was leading to earlier, it kind of flew under the radar for so long. And it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we talked about this in the last episode too, where we talked about Nazaré, where it almost needed like the equipment and the jet skis to get to a certain place, and maybe, big wave surfers to get to a certain place where this could seem feasible. Because maybe 20 years ago, if you would have pulled up there, it would have been like, that's not even a wave. Like, this is not doable. There's no channel. Now it's like, it's the spot. Jaws is no longer the one big wave spot in the world that, reaches those mammoth heights on a consistent basis. And it's even more consistent than Jaws, I'd say, like
it's
maybe
the most consistent big wave on earth. I think if you're an up and coming big wave surfer, the best career choice you can make right now is just go spend a ton of time in Nazaré. It's where all the eyes are, the non-endemic sponsors. I mean, people are sponsored by Porsche, Mercedes, Prada. Every other European big company is supporting big wave surfing. That's the mecca of big wave surfing, I think, at the moment. Whether it's the best big wave in the world on the day, I mean, everyone can argue that their home spot is. I think Jaws is the best big wave on its day. That being said, the whole industry sort of feels like it's there. It's a small industry, but you can go there and make a name for yourself as a big wave surfer. And you can train in waves 30 feet or bigger pretty much on a daily basis all winter long. So it's the ultimate training ground. Now, if it gets big enough, like that's Guinness Book of World Records, that's a little more rare, but it happens throughout the winter. It's one place that I like to go at least once a year because of the training.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note too that Nazaré hasn't always been about big waves. It's always been a summertime sort of vacation destination for a lot of, Europeans. And it's like an amazing fishing town. And, the South Beach on the southern side of the cliff there is like, in the summertime, you go there and it's packed with people. People are going in the water. And then, like you were saying, in the past, winter comes, it would empty out. And that was
Just
their
a
off
ghost
season.
town.
But nowadays it's both. They have this kind of cool double economy going on with the big waves and then also
and it's
summer
like
tourist season.
Everyone has like basically they have these old kind of buildings, warehouses that used to be housing fishing boats, fishing nets. You would basically, clean up the fish before you would sell it and send it down to Lisbon. Now most of those are actually like Formula One style garages where everyone has their skis, their boards, their changing bays, hot showers. It's like, oh, there's the Red Bull spot. Oh, Mercedes has a spot. And if you were trying to find a big wave surfer, you would just look under whichever one of those sponsors they might have, and they'd be probably there. So it's pretty interesting like that.
Yeah, you pull up there and it's like, it almost feels like a different sport versus what we're used to here in Hawaii and Jaws specifically. It's really grassroots in a sense. Like everyone kind of puts their stuff together at home. You drive to the harbor, Maliko, launch, go up there, and it's a little bit more ragtag, I'd say. But there it's like a specific operation. There's a guy at the gate that's making sure you're a big wave surfer and letting you in. Oh, you totally. Get in there. Like you said, it's such an operation. The harbor master
won't let you out unless you're like, got your ship tight, basically. And there's way more to surfing Nazaré, I think, than there is to maybe other spots, because so much more is required to make it happen safely. You have to have a spotter every single time. You pretty much have to have a backup ski always following you. Whereas, here in Hawaii, you and your buddy can go out on a ski and just go do it, But over there, people treat it the way it should be. I mean, some people roll up pretty loose, but the best guys are, have a really solid team behind them. But they'll shut down the harbor if it gets too foggy, not let people out. And most of the time they're pretty lenient. It's a different world. I mean, there's literally billboards of big wave surfers there. Like Garrett McNamara will have a Mercedes ad up, and you'll just be like, whoa, this is like crazy. As a big wave surfer, I actually feel like I belong someplace. Whereas normally, like you said, it's so grassroots, you don't actually feel like you belong anywhere. You're just like with your friends. But if you want to get any Wi-Fi in Nazaré, it's basically the password is McNamara. And when I first started going there, if you could go anywhere and just type in a Wi-Fi password to be McNamara and get on the internet. So it's like, it's crazy. I think out of the three most famous people in Portugal might be the president, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Garrett McNamara. And I'm not sure Garrett can even speak Portuguese, but he's truly like taken this town to new heights and put Nazaré on the map as maybe one of the top 3 best big waves on earth.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember you telling me, just going back to the history a bit, some just psycho stories of, I guess, local legends more so, of like fishermen that went on big swells and got a little too close to the waves. Like, do you mind telling that story?
Well, the most crazy thing, I mean, I've asked stories, and whether they're all true or not, I'd like to think so, but that was my favorite thing for a long time, is you go up to some of the older, locals that had been there for generations. And I mean, one particular time the waves were really big, and we had come in and we were getting some food. It was the evening. We actually came in kind of early, and I was talking to one of, the older gentlemen, and we were on the beach. He broke in English, of course, Portuguese being his first language. And he was telling me how this isn't even that big, and throughout his life and even his family's life, it gets way bigger. And then I asked him the question, has anyone ever surfed this place as big as you've seen it? And he's like, oh, not even close. Like, it gets way bigger. It hasn't been long enough before one of those megalodon big ones. He didn't say megalodon, but one of those mega swells came in. And so that's like scary and exciting at the same time, because you just want to see the waves as big as the ocean can produce. The biggest I had personally ever seen it was that October 2020 swell. It was during COVID. Took a leap of faith to fly all the way to Europe, with risk of maybe being turned around and sent back to America, because there was like high tension still around COVID. But when I was going through immigration, the officer looked at me, kind of scowled, tried to check if I had all the right paperwork, all the everything that you were supposed to fill out. And he's like, what is your business doing here? Like, almost ready to deny me. And I said, I'm going to Nazaré to go surf big waves. And his face lit up, because, in Portugal, Nazaré is the pride of the country when it comes to waves. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And stamped my passport and let me through. And it was on that swell. I was towing Carlos Brulé in at one point. And when I was towing him into that wave, we were on the Big Mama Peak. So the main peak you always see people ride are on the inside. And that's where they like double up, 2 waves come into one and they stack. and then they just come down, and it's just a big explosion. The Big Mama peaks where that 100-foot wave maybe exists, and it's the next spot out. There's like a seamount that a wave can jack up and break. I remember towing him onto probably an 80-foot wave that didn't break. It was so steep, and I was waiting for it to break, and he was riding it, and it just faded out before heading into the inside, and he couldn't make it all the way. And I was going to pick him up, fairly comfortable, and his eyes were just this big. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a bigger wave behind us. And I look back right as I'm picking up on the sled, in that moment when I sweep him from grabbing his arm, leaning over on the Sea-Doo, and throw him onto the sled. The biggest wave I'd ever seen. It had to have been, I don't know, like a third bigger than any wave that I've ever seen in the ocean. And no one was near it because it was kind of farther out. Everyone had focused on the second peak. So at Nazaré, you have peak 1, and then you have 1.5, which breaks between 2. And 2 is that right and left. That's basically the big right that I got back in the day during 2020 competition there, before COVID. And so Big Mom was outside of peak 1, right in front of the cliff. And I got him on, and I was going as fast as I could on this Sea-Doo, and I was looking back at this wave, and it was slow motion. And the way the wave broke is it didn't come down just like a normal wave with a wall. There was kind of no wall. It's just this giant mountain, and it broke, and it flared out. And as it was breaking, the whitewater looked like there was big wave whitewater in the whitewater. It was so small, but for its size, the water was doing something completely different than I'd ever seen. And without a doubt, that wave was over 100 feet. I'm claiming 115 feet. Whether you rode it on the shoulder, which would have been like a 40-foot faced part of the wave, or dead center, you were not making it, because when it finally broke, it peeled out and spat both ways and exploded outward. And I was blown away no one had caught that. I was actually really bummed, because had I just towed Carlos over the other wave and towed him into that, he would have definitely not have made it, but it would have been the biggest wave ever ridden, I think, because it was top to bottom. It was a freak wedge, and I barely outran it. The whitewater caught up to us. It was going as fast as the jet ski, and made it into the channel, and it kind of tickled Carlos in the back, and his board was absolutely gone. I was just like, that was the biggest, craziest thing ever. And then I heard another story too. I mean, of course, you hear the stories of fishermen going out there collecting their nets, and a huge swell comes in and it just wrecks them, because there's the one surprising thing at Nazaré is there's so many fish that are in the whitewater. You'll be on the jet ski in the most turbulent ocean in the world, and then you'll just see like a school of fish go by jumping in the whitewater. They thrive in it. I don't know. They're just next level. So the fishermen try to get as close as possible with their nets. And, I think hundreds of people have probably died over the time there, because swells come out of the blue and one big wave catches them by surprise, and, no flotation. I think if you're on a big day out there and you don't have flotation, you will drown. It's what happened to our friend Marcio Ferreira. He was a big wave legend, mad dog. One of the early guys to really paddle into Peahi with Danilo Couto and Yuri Soledad. They were trying to really push the limits back in the early days of paddling. But basically, he recently drowned there. I think it might have been a year and a half ago, 2 years. He drowned there. It wasn't even on the biggest day ever. He didn't have an inflation. He just had, thin flotation, so foam. But you get held down there long enough and you're just not coming up. And that's another dangerous thing, is the interval is so short, because the waves go from this big ocean, this big trench, and then when they hit, they slow down and they all stack up against each other. So somebody on a, wave runner, a Sea-Doo, only has 7 seconds to get to where you are and out. So you got to be on your guy, like, perfectly. And he was under for like 3 or 4 waves, and then came up just unconscious, and they couldn't revive him. And yeah, the rest is history. God bless his soul. So it's pretty scary there, because I've been there a few times where I've witnessed death and I've witnessed near deaths. One of the craziest stories, before I get into that depressing stuff, is that one time one of the locals told me that when Napoleon was trying to conquer Portugal during his reign, he tried to come in above where Lisbon is, because he can't go to, the capital of Portugal. He'd be overran. So they actually went towards Nazaré, and he lost many ships. because it was on a giant swell, and many people of his army died, and he had to turn around and go back to France and regroup. That was just one local legend story I heard. I'd like to confirm if that's true or not, but I like to believe it too. It just sounds like crazy that Nazaré had some effect in history, perhaps. And of course, they went to Nazaré because that's where they figured was the next deepest channel to Lisbon, which is a giant port city. It has a big inlet like San Francisco Bay, but now you had a giant trench, that they had identified and come on the wrong day. And, Nazaré 100-foot waves have different plans.
That's terrifying. Yeah. And just to give some context so when we're talking about trenches and making big waves, I find it super interesting how that works. And just to give sort of a little lesson on that, I suppose, is that, waves, when they're traveling, especially these ground swells, they have long periods. Their energy extends all the way almost to the bottom of the water column. So when, these swells hit shallower water, they basically slow down. And what makes Nazaré different is it has, how deep is that channel? Like 8,000 feet?
10,000 feet.
10,000
It's the
feet.
deepest trench in all of Europe. It was made by a glacier during the last ice age.
So that super deep trench is sort of right next to sort of a shallower shoal. And what happens, because that trench is so deep, it allows all that swell energy that usually would hit the continental shelf and slow down to come in. And then when it does that, the other part of the swell that's over the shallower water that's right adjacent to it, it wraps in on itself. And that's what creates those towering peaks. And, we've been there on the biggest swells ever. And, say where we're staying, which is a couple miles down the road, you look out and it's big. It's like, 15, 20 foot faces in the shore break. And then just down there, you look over and it's 80, 90 feet. And it's just an absolute trip how that works.
And the rides there, the waves, all of that energy get exerted vertically. And the waves really don't break for very long. You might only get like a 5-second ride, 6-second ride. Because it's like all at once. And it's a beach break. And it's not like a normal wave that kind of breaks down a reef, just breaking into sand. And there's just boils of sand coming up everywhere. It's just so wild. But, even going into, the life-threatening aspects of that place, I think what makes it so dangerous is there's not a defined channel like most big waves. And, if you're on the beach or if you're on a sea-doo on the inside and you're looking out, it looks impossible to make it out. The only way to make it out is you have to be willing to climb white waters that are 30 feet tall. And I can remember being on the back of Lucas Chumbo's ski many times, looking at a white water and saying, dude, turn around. This is impossible. We're not going to be able to make it over this. And he's like, we can make it. We can make it. And they have a different perspective of what is possible because here in Hawaii, we utilize the channel a lot. You kind of go with the white water, pick up your guy, and then you go to the right or to the left and you get into the channel and you come back around. You're very rarely going through whitewater unless you're trapped. And at that point, the whitewater is big, but not like 30 feet or maybe even bigger. I've gone over whitewaters that seemed impossible. I was like, we're going to die right now. There's just no way. And you get about 3/4 of the way up and then you punch through the lip of the top of the whitewater or you punch through the water and you shoot out like a torpedo on the other side because these machines are just 325 horsepower and compare that to the 125 horsepower jet skis that Garrett McNamara and his friends started using when they first went there. So I can't even imagine utilizing those machines that they were first starting with. Even 325 horsepower doesn't feel like a lot. And they're 1812 cc. They're just absolute monsters and they're tuned up. They probably are closer to 400 to be honest after these guys get, their mechanics in there. But one of the gnarliest stories that I got to actually be a part of in a bad way, was it was the final heat of the day for Nazaré 2020. It was this jersey right here. And, Lucas Chumbo and I were going to win this event. And, I was getting the final waves and it was golden light. I was feeling so comfortable. I was in the pocket of these huge barreling lefts. It was just, everything was coming together and it was our moment, right? And we were only like maybe 5 minutes from the end of the heat before we could put our arms over our head because we kind of knew that we were going to win based on our other heat performances. And this was like maybe a victory lap a little bit, especially with the performance that we just had. And Alex Botello and Hugo Val were on the wave before one of ours, and I had gotten a really big ride, kicked out, made it. He was getting picked up. Alex Botello was getting picked up by Hugo Val, and what happens at Nazaré is the waves come from all directions at times, and they got stuck in this triangle, this wedge. And when Hugo Val was trying to get over that wave, both waves hit them and shot him in the air, and Alex Botello hit his head in the back of the jet ski, and Hugo Val landed on the ski, hurt his leg and back, but it knocked Alex Botello unconscious. And, when you're out there, you can't see what's happening. And, in hindsight, I wish we could have just gone straight in and been the ones to help save. But then we were in this contest, and our spotter had told us, hey, there's something going on, stand by. But they didn't want us to go in to help because, if you try to rush into a situation where one guy is down, rush in and make a mistake, now there's 2 or 3 guys down, and it just becomes like this avalanche effect. And they had a dedicated water safety, not only on the beach, but out there for this exact scenario. So we sat by and we were just like ready to go in to help. And it ended up taking them about 8 minutes to actually get him onto the sand, which is like, death territory. I mean, they say 10 minutes, you could be brain dead if you're not, breathing. Like consciously holding your breath, maybe, unconscious is a totally different thing. So they finally got him up there. He went to the hospital. We all thought he was probably going to die. He had sand in his lungs. He was probably out for months in the hospital, pumping sand out of his lungs. And it was just like, it soured what would be this inaugural win, this huge win for Lucas and I. And that's not the point. It's not the point that we were bummed about it, but it was just like it took us back from this high moment where you're like Icarus flying close to the sun, and it brought us back down to what really mattered, which was getting home safe to our friends and family and everyone else being safe too. And we're only doing this because we absolutely love it and it's fun, and it's not something that, the trophy at the end of the day doesn't really matter. It's about the performance and getting out there and getting home safe. So that was like a really interesting thing. And, since that event, they haven't called that event on when it's gotten that gigantic. That's when I got probably the biggest wave of my life so far on that right. It was this double up wedge. I ended up winning XXL award, and that was pretty cool. But, when waves get to a certain level, especially in big waves, like in the 70-foot range or bigger, it's just, I don't know, it's on another scale, and everything just, there's a lot more consequences even over 50-foot waves. But I'm glad that he's doing okay. He's not really surfing big waves much anymore, and I can understand why. And so far, there's been close calls in these events, but big wave surf competition's really not what it used to be, so we really don't even have any events. Like, for example, the Jaws Challenge hasn't ran in 5 years, and it won't run this year because they canceled it. So there goes competitive big wave surfing.
Yeah, and that day was, I was there too. I was there for that October swell that you were talking about earlier, and then this one, and both of those days were just unimaginably big. Like, I've never seen waves move in such slow motion. There was so much going on. It was like I was helping spot for some of it, and it was just so hectic. Like, it was just pure disorder. Even it was crazy. Even up on top of the castle, like, guys were getting all all obsessive over their spot on top of the thing to watch their spotters. I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm in the lineup here, but I'm like, getting regulated from the certain spot on the cliff. It was pretty crazy, but it was just such a wild experience. And then that situation with Hugo and Alex was just insane. I remember I was standing. From
your perspective, how was that unfolding? Because Lucas and I, we got told to stop by Ian. And then we were like in the dark, and we are like, what's happening? Is he dead? Like, what's going on?
I mean, yeah, we didn't know anything either. Obviously, it was horrifying to watch just because we could see sort of everything playing out, and it was just so helpless because it was like right below us. Like, you're so close, but you just knew
like you can almost reach them, but they're just out of reach, right?
But you can just do nothing. You're watching the water safety guys trying to come in and do laps to try to get them, but there's 40-foot walls of whitewater just inundating, and they have to go all the way to the beach, reset, pound back out, try to get back to where he is.
Face down.
He's just face down, and you're just like, the minutes are going by, and we've always been trained like, okay, if someone's unconscious, like, you need to get them out ASAP because, you know, the longer you're unconscious, the more likely you're going to suffer brain damage.
Hindsight's 2020, but I figured, you know, if Lucas and I went in, and I think if it happened again now, we would just go in. We would just disobey all orders because, you know, with what we know now, you really got to have somebody on the back of your machine to jump off and just bear hug the person, because then when the next ski comes around, you can actually like grab them. And while it is a hard work, when it's someone's life on the line, you do get some superhero strength from nowhere, and you would get them on, or at least bear hug them so you don't lose them, and just roll up the beach with them, you know, a little more mass, but hard to do when it's 40-foot waves. And even if I was thinking, gosh, if I just jumped in there, I would pull one of his other inflation cords so his airbag expands more, even just more buoyancy, maybe he'd get pushed in.
Yeah, and it was also just a testament to, you know, so much time had passed, and when they finally did get him to shore, it was pretty somber up on the cliff, just because it's like I was just thinking like, there's just no way
he's done,
like,
right?
You know, it's like that long of amount of time unconscious, getting pounded underwater, guaranteed lungs have filled up. You know, you'd think over that amount of time there'd be brain damage, but it really was sort of inspiring.
He was this close. He was like a hair
so
thread
close
away from just being dead or brain damaged, like, you know, and maybe he's dealing with some stuff now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it really is just a testament to how important sort of those life-saving skills are, you know, like what we do with training with the B-Rag and all those sort of courses. Like, that's when it really hit home. I was like, wow, this stuff gets real so fast. And if they hadn't had people that really understood what to do in that situation, administer the CPR, do everything right, you know, he would not have survived. And, you know, we've been around the world in multiple situations where we've seen people get brought back to life through these sort of life-saving skills, and it's just so important.
Credit where credit is due. The water safe, they did everything they could, and you can always do something better. Anyone could do something better, but they really did, I think, a fantastic job, because all that matters at the end of the day is not how it's done, but what the end result is. And he's alive, and he's with his family, and he's raising his children, and that's a success right there. And, you know, always things could be a little bit better, but until you're out in that white water, it's something else.
And it's just something that, like, you never, I mean, like, think about that day in particular. You guys were having one of the best big wave sessions of your entire lives, like both doing the most high performance 360s down 80-foot waves. You got the biggest wave of your life. There was a crowd of 40,000 people just screaming their heads off. It sounded like it was a, you know, football stadium. And then the last thing you think is that the day was going to end with something like that. And that's just how important it is to always be ready. And yeah, I'd say if you're, you know, people out there, if you're going to surf big waves, like, that's how fast these things happen.
Well, it's an investment.
I think it's so important that you're just well trained, because those things happen. If those guys didn't know what they were doing, there would have just been no chance.
It's an investment in time. It's an investment in resources. Big wave surfing, anyone can go out and do, but you have to be willing to spend a lot of money to do it. I mean, one big wave session for most of us, for me in particular, it could really vary. If it's the best of all time, it could be anywhere from $8 to $10,000 that I pay to have the proper safety, have the boats, have the jet skis, the fuel, the people's time, and of course, you know, to have filmers documenting it all. But then I would say an average big wave session is like, it can be up to $5,000 per session if you're doing everything that you're supposed to do. So luckily the sponsors can cover it, but it's a real investment. I mean, a lot of these guys will go pound nails and be lumberjacks over the summer, and then spend all their money that they had earned on their big wave season. And you can tell by the end of the season, their resources get smaller and smaller. They get, you know, less support because they can't afford it, but you got to hand it to them. They don't have the sponsors to really do it, but they love big wave surfing so much that they'll literally work, you know, as hard as they can over 6 months, and then spend the next 6 months just surfing these massive waves. But, you know, the craziest thing about that story is it all happened over a tow and surfing contest. And prior to that, did we have three? I think we had like 3 paddle-in big wave events at Nazaré, which in hindsight seems like an awful idea. I mean, of course, it wasn't being ran when it was as big as when we tow, but it's still like, there's nowhere scarier to really paddle, because it's not a matter of if, but when you get caught inside. And nothing worse than big wave surfing than getting caught inside, even over sharks, because most sharks don't venture into big wave areas like, say, Mavericks. It's in the red triangle. You see great whites. We could talk about that in the Mavericks episode that we'll do, but at Nazaré, no sharks or anything, but there's really nothing scarier than being caught inside. And if I'm to dive into this other story, you remember the Damien Hobgood story, right? Yeah. That was the craziest thing. I had made, I think I had a shocker event. It was 2017, I believe, and the waves were huge. Jimmy Mitchell won that year, and I can remember in that final, I think he had made only one wave, and the other 5 contestants were charging and surfing really well, but were getting absolutely obliterated. Like, it looked like the only way to do well in that contest was to, like, fling yourself over the ledge and hope you don't drown. Like, it to me, it wasn't really like smart big wave surfing. It was just pure charging. But you got to hand it to those guys. They were already incredible surfers, and what they did was just terrifying. And I was sitting on the cliff going, gosh, I really don't want any part of that. I surf big waves to make big waves. But before that, the favorite of that entire event was Damien Hobgood, former CT surfer for the Surfing World Tour, the Championship Tour. He had an 11.2, and he was just killing it through heats, getting pocket rides, getting some barrels, charging. He's a goofy foot, so that wave is generally at that size for paddle and surfing, mainly a left. And he was just absolutely killing it. Long story short, he was on the beach getting a ride out on the back of Garrett McNamara's ski, and I can remember just being on the cliff, and all eyes were out on the heat, in front of the cliff, and he was way down the beach, and I was watching him, and I was just like seeing, okay, this would be interesting. How do you get out with an 11.2 on a jet ski and giant surf? Sure enough, they go over a couple white waters, they're doing it, and then this freak backwash comes in, because the beach gets really steep over these big swells because it's basically eroded away from the current, and so you'll get one big wave that'll come up, bounce off this bank, and come back out. And so there was like a literal 12-foot wave going back out to sea against 30-foot white waters. And I was just watching this happen, where Garrett and the ski and Damien laying on the sled. And when you're laying on that rescue sled that's attached to the back of the jet ski, you can't see anything. You are completely blind. You're getting sprayed. You don't know what's going on. Your complete faith is in your driver. And essentially what happened is they were just caught in the worst place ever. What's going on here?
Whoa. How'd you do that?
I don't know. So the story, to continue this story, and it's not a celebration, but it is quite exciting. Backwash, 30-foot whitewater, Garrett, Damien, jet ski. They didn't see what was behind them. So what you do is you slow down right before the next wave, and at the last second you gas it. And that's what they did. Right as they're gassing, this 12-foot backwash wave comes behind them and launches them like SpaceX. They went to the moon. It was like they were probably 30, 35 feet in the air, 30, 35 feet in the air, vertical. Garrett jumps off the side because it was just this wedge explosion, and Damien is still holding on to the sled. He lets go. Yes. He lets go like a firework. He lets go, and he basically falls with the ski like a rag doll, arms out, legs out, with an 11.2 attached to him. The thing comes straight down and lands directly on him, directly on him. He might have hit the water a second early, so the ski hit the water, then hit him, is I think what happened. But they're so far down the beach, no one on the cliff is paying attention. And I just happened to be looking the right direction in that moment. And Garrett gets picked up, the ski's upside down, they're trying to get the ski over, but no one's really paying attention to Damien. And Damien is like floating on his back, almost got blacked out, unconscious. And next thing you know, about 15 minutes later, he finally gets to the sand after being swept up and down like a rag doll, crawls up, takes his 11.2 leash off, plops on the ground. I start running down the cliff, down the beach, to make sure he's okay, because no one's paying attention to him. Everyone's eyes are on the wave and not on him. And he was supposed to go out into his semifinal heat, which he was probably going to win. And I got down there, and I'd met him halfway down the beach, and he had the biggest goose egg on the front of his head and black eye, and he just said, I almost died. I almost blacked out. I got hit by the jet ski. He had left his board down there. I don't think he ever retrieved it. It was just, he's like, I'm done. And I think after that was his last contest, and even maybe one of his last, big wave surfing trips. Because that stuff puts it in perspective with your family, and he's a, devoted family man. Still, I think one of the best big wave surfers of that year, and probably still would be best big wave goofy footer around, coming from a CT level, a professional surfing level, to big wave surfing. And so he never even got his shot in the semifinal, and I felt like no one even realized that he had gotten hurt. They just thought he never showed up to the event, or to the semifinal heat. So that was a little traumatizing. I think had I had to surf a heat again, I would be paddling around from the harbor and take that extra 45 minutes versus trying to navigate a 10-foot, 11-foot board through that shore break. And it really, it's not Garrett's fault. It's just circumstances of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think also when you have an 11-foot board hanging off the back sled, you can't turn the ski very well, so you're very immobile. And after that, I decided to always sit on the ski and hold the board in the gunnel. And if I had to bail, I would actually keep my leash off so it wouldn't yank me off. You wouldn't get dragged off. But yeah, that's intense.
That kind of just, that reminds me of how sort of it does feel like Nazaré is meant for tow surfing in that way. Like the idea of, we've been out there, when people are paddling, and some guys get some sick ones, but it's just so all over the place. It really doesn't feel like it's meant for that. But you credit to those people that do it, because it is insane. But you probably won't see me out there on a 20-foot day trying to paddle.
I mean, there's been incredible big wave rides paddling out there. This kid Nacho from Spain, Red Bull surfer, he caught probably one of the best paddle waves of all time out there, which is this giant left barrel he pulled in and came spitting out. It looked like a 25-foot pipe wave. Wow. Pretty much very rare. Actually, I was sitting next to him when he went, and I was a little too deep, and I was going to go, and I remember hearing the crowd erupt from, the water, the whole cliff, and I was like, he either died or got the barrel of his life. And I was kicking myself. I was like, I should have just gone, but there was no way. I was just out of position. I was mainly focused on the right. He was focused on the left at peak 2. And he ended up getting probably the best paddle in wave that I had ever seen out there. But yeah, I don't know. Paddling, it's its own set of challenges and it's cool moments, but it's really made for tow and surfing. I mean, if you want to unlock the truest performance of that wave, be able to ride the biggest waves that come in, best on a tow board. But I would say a lot of that energy has shifted out there from competitions to just breaking the Guinness Book of World Record, and it can be kind of frustrating. I don't necessarily show up out there to try to break Guinness Book of World Records. I believe it sort of will come to you. It'll happen if it's meant to happen. Trying to chase it down, you end up chasing it away. You end up making mistakes and you're not listening to your intuition. And gosh, yeah, all that being said, now it's pretty on those really big days, it's almost not fun because it's so scrappy. There's so much, yelling, and people are pissed off sometimes. And I'm not trying to put anyone down, but it's just their careers are all based on breaking the Guinness Book of World Record. And if they don't, they may not have a sponsor and they may not be able to do it. So you can understand there's a high amount of pressure that is pushed onto that. And
it's just about catching the wave,
Yeah, once you're on the wave, you break the world record, whether you make it or not. I mean, it should be, you got to make it, but it's just not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean,
that.
my personal approach to it has always been when I've been there, I'm so happy to sit out those giant days and watch you and Chumbo do your thing and scrap it out with everybody, because
it's so
if
scrappy.
it might be a hot take for me, but on those big days, the wave doesn't look that great to me. It's kind of a little bit more mushy. It's a little bit harder to surf. You're kind of just locked in, and I've
compare it to Jaws though. I feel like it's, when I say one of the 3 best big waves in the world, I don't necessarily mean in terms of comparing it to a Jaws or a Mavericks or a quality, that kind of quality. I mean, it's just so big. And there's the own set of challenges of riding the wave is you treat it like you're riding down a giant mountain with an avalanche. And that's fun in its own way. it's different than taking off at Jaws and backdooring a peak where it feels like a traditional wave, maybe not as tall, but, has just as much force behind it. And so it's just how you approach it, your mindset to it. But I agree with you. It's like my last time I was out there, and this is kind of a reminder talking about it, it was so downright scrappy, it almost wasn't fun anymore. And I was like, why even come here? Like, this is not cool. Everyone's just cutting each other off. People are getting in full fist fights out the back. One story was someone dropped in on someone, and when they fell, the other person forced the other person to wipe out, and someone used their jet ski as a weapon and launched it at them, and they both bailed off the sides, kind of like, a cartoon in a way, and the ski hit their board and launched off the side of their machine like a ramp, and their board was buckled. It might have been, it was just, I'm not going to say names. I know who they are, but I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but just know there's like that sort of stuff sort of happens. I've actually been in a scenario where someone that I was with on the jet ski got ripped off the jet ski while I was laying on the sled, and that person tried to drown them in the water, but their inflation vest went off like an airbag. And it was the funniest thing because they were getting dunked like they were a cork and kept popping up. And they did it a few times before they realized what was happening. And there was just this screaming match. And the only thing I could think of, I ran up and I tried to split them up because they were on the edge of the jet ski, and I held them side to side. And I was like, the only thing I could think of was like, guys, it's not worth it. But it was so comical because they weren't really hurting each other. They were just like...
They were so padded up.
They were so padded up, and they were bobbing each other that I was kind of like, I kind of want to see what happens next. But I was like, no. It's almost 6 p.m. and it's actually funny. And there's a shot in the HBO's 100-Foot Wave where they're talking about camaraderie and friendship and loving one another and, people, the brotherhood, the sisterhood. And they use the shot of that escalated fight where everyone's screaming at each other from different camps, and jet skis are flying around and people want to kill each other. And they use that exact shot to describe the brotherhood. And I was like, well, that's true. But in that moment, that was the furthest thing of what was actually happening. They wanted to kill each other. And then, it ended up working out the next day because the guy that was trying to drown the other guy ended up saving me, who was my partner. And then, it's just, it all sort of worked out and everyone kissed and made up, and it's all good now. But there's always that sort of tension. And it was all at 6 p.m. in 80-foot waves. And I was like, gosh, this is like pretty next level. I wish I could like have filmed it on my GoPro and actually put it out there, but I don't want to like throw anyone on the bus, but it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, no, that's what I was just saying. Like when it's that big and everyone's mindset's like, okay, we need to get on the biggest wave ever. It's just like, to me, and I'm sure to you, that's not so worried about just getting the biggest wave. It's like, those giant swells, we've been there. The couple weeks that we've been there after the big swell where everyone's all blown out, where it's maybe amazing. 15, 20 feet. Like we're out there almost alone, just having the time of our lives and able to do turns, tricks. There's some barrels out there, and that's what it's about, It's not about the biggest wave almost.
My favorite big wave sessions are when they are undercalled and you get out there and then they get bigger throughout the day, and then all of a sudden it's as big as it's ever been, but no one's on it. And, part of the problem is you have like certain media outlets hyping up swells. This is going to be the biggest one ever. And then it brings everyone out of the woodwork and everyone gets all frazzled, and you can spend a whole day trying to get the biggest wave ever ridden, but there might be only 2 or 3 that are in that next level size. I mean, the waves are generally big, let's say 60 to 70 feet, but that record is over 80 feet. And there might only be 2 or 3 that come in, and you have 40 jet skis out there trying to get it. And you're like, this is out of control. Like, you're going to end up doing something you don't want to do because you're forced into it because you're trying to block and you're not paying attention to the wave. And I mean, my least favorite sessions in big waves have been the overhyped swells where just there's the aggression and aggro, and people don't take turns.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I love riding big waves, and I almost prefer a little bit smaller than the biggest days ever because people don't look at them as much, and we can just go get a bunch of waves and have fun.
You can make it as gnarly as you want to, even on 20-foot days at Jaws. If you're doing flips and 360s and trying to get barreled, it's almost gnarlier than if it was 70 feet and you were just straight lining it to the channel every wave. Like, you're probably going to fall less on those days almost.
There's the continuous argument between people that, paddling is so much gnarlier than tow and surfing. And, at face value, you have to paddle in, and that's pretty gnarly in the drop. but generally you're paddling into waves that are, possible. With tow and surfing, you're towing into waves that you can't paddle. And you're taking off 100 yards deeper than you would be paddling. And they can be gnarly in different ways. Like tow and surfing could be the easiest way to ride a big wave, no doubt. You could safety surf. You could probably do 10 years of surfing big waves and never fall. We call them shoulder soldiers. So you can just be on the shoulder of a giant wave, and that's fine. If they're enjoying it, they took their turn, it's all good. But, you could make it as hard as you want. You could get a 10-second barrel out of Jaws if you want. The longest barrel paddling is probably maybe 2 or 3 seconds. It really comes down to the person. So the only bummer is when, the level of respect or mutual respect between people gets thrown out the window and people don't, take turns. That's where the power of having this machine gets pretty annoying because people abuse it. And if you utilized it as a tool and you played the game the same way you would paddling, like, okay, I just paddled out. Nathan Florence has been waiting. I'm not going to even paddle for a wave. If he misses it, it's my turn. He's not going to miss it. He's going to commit to whatever wave he's going on. So I wish the skis were treated the same way, but yeah, you get guys that can barely surf a 6-foot wave and they get trigger happy, and then it just takes away the fun. So, I mean, it's kind of my favorite days in big waves sometimes are just the really horrific, windy, blown out days, because no one likes those. and you can just kind of do whatever you want and use the chops to do, tricks and flips. And, you would agree with me, right? We're not out there for any other reason that we just love to do it. I think the day we're not into it, we just won't go.
Yeah. No, those, like you said, those windy days that no one thought to go. That's when we've gotten our best, most memorable waves anyway. And that's what it's about. It's just
even
having a good time,
surfing,
taking turns, Yeah. And it is nice that there's the paddle aspect to it too, that balances it out. It kind of keeps the trigger happy tow guys away sometimes.
It doesn't at Nazaré. Nazaré is just a free for all regardless. Like Nazaré is where you can be a cowboy and there's just like no rules sort of. And it's like, it just all sort of works out. Well, yeah. I don't know if it actually all works out. It just is what it is at this point. It'll probably get regulated soon. I feel like the government there is a lot more involved, which is, it's a good thing because they put on events, but it's a bad thing because should government really be involved in everything that we have to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, one last story. One last horrific story. This is like probably the most scarring one. I was out with DK Walsh, Ian Walsh's younger twin brother. We were actually paddling pretty big Nazaré, and we were taking in Trevor Carlson, who's like an underground big wave surfer. He's caught some massive waves everywhere. Spent a lot of time doing it. He's the guy that, will pound nails, have a construction company, and then go charge these giant waves and to support his family. But we were going in, and Trevor had dinner. He was at this point a really dedicated skydiver as well. I think most big wave surfers like skydiving because it's a similar fix to what you could get dropping into a big wave. But we were driving him in. It was the evening. We were just going to drop him off and then go back out. And as we were driving in from Praia del Norte, where the cliff is, where First Peak breaks, and we're coming into the South Beach, we saw something like hit the ground really hard. And we're like, what was that? And there's this jump rock that base jumpers go and they jump off of. And a lot of the guys at the time that were surfing Nazaré were doing base jumping too. They were just absolute psychos. 250 feet, I would say that's probably borderline base jump. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've gone up there and gone, gosh, it's high, but it doesn't seem like you have enough time. And what had happened is he had jumped with his buddy, and there's actually a video online of it where he jumps and the guy pulls his chute and the turbulent air doesn't allow his to open up. He just basically falls and bounces off the cliff. And Trevor had dinner with him the night before. He was like one of his good friends. Nazaré is a small place, obviously. And we had dropped him off, and Trevor was one of the first people to run up and see his friend and try to, like, I don't know, there's nothing you could really do. He was broken. Resuscitate him or keep him alive till, but he passed away on the beach right there. And that was like kind of like a dark triggering moment. because here you are having the best time ever. And these are these reality checks you get out at Nazaré. It's like, life is all good. Everything's working out. Best waves, you get pounded. It's just an experience. It's nothing life threatening, or so it doesn't feel. And then all of a sudden, a reality check. And yeah, he had passed away right in front of us. I remember that evening we were going to go back out and tow, and we decided to. And, we were definitely more conservative because we were one of the few people out at that point. But it was the most crazy sunset I had ever seen. And we had been there for about 2 weeks up to this point. And there was the one night where the sunset was just, I've never seen a sunset like that since anywhere in the world. And it was like, I don't know, it felt like it was in connection with him passing away. He was a pretty popular individual amongst, the community there in Nazaré. And I didn't know him personally, but it was, a tragic passing. And there's many stories like that. I mean, it can happen to anyone out there. I mean, not the base jumping part, but the surfing part. I mean, guys have been flung into that undersea cave and lost the jet ski inside. You've seen that video, right, Rage?
Yeah.
I think you'll pull it up on this, but
yeah,
jet ski in that cave, washing around, driving it out. Ross Clark Jones taking a right, getting pounded and pushed onto the rocks, should have died. If it was any bigger of a day, he would have died. He had to crawl up the cliff, was seeing cross-eyed. There's no lack of excitement. So every time I go there and I'm on the plane, I'm looking out the window and I'm going, I hope this isn't my last plane ride.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. It's like the amount of crazy stories from there is just like pretty endless. And there's
pretty endless.
One of my favorite stories, which maybe we could talk about in a future podcast. I know you have to go soon, but one of our big wave legend heroes, I probably won't say his name yet, but there is a pretty classic story with him there too. And just stuff like that.
What did he do?
Remember when he was yelling at Ian Walsh and I because he was foiling and we thought he was in the way, and then he scolded you on the beach later for not saying hi to him?
We're not going to say who it is, but we got regulated super hard for existing. And, it was probably chatter from another big wave surfer, putting us down like we think we're the best or something when we're just out here trying to have fun and stuff. But yeah, that was a funny story because Ridge and Ian Walsh, another legend, was on a jet ski and just floating out at sea waiting for
so far out,
like a mile out. And then all of a sudden the person was yelling, "Too many machines, make room." And they were thinking, they were like looking around and it was only them. So they just got like totally regulated. And then
when he was coming up to us, we were like, "Oh, there he comes. I will say
we'll
what
say
up.
Hi.
This is going to be sick." And then he just starts scolding us. It was
so
crazy.
In the comments, I want to
kids.
see anyone's guesses who it might be.
Yeah. You
might be able to guess it. You might not. But I got yelled at and I didn't know why. I still don't know why. I still respect this person. And I actually, still admire what they do. But yeah, it was, don't meet your heroes, kids. This is like the rule of thumb. It always comes back down to that because you'll get regulated.
I know. We were so excited he was in town too. We were like, man, he's like, we got to get dinner with him. Like, it's going to be so sick to see that he, is coming out here and just
I felt like a little kid.
It was the opposite experience.
I felt like a little kid getting scolded on the dock. And because I'm not the tallest big wave surfer. And it was Chumbo that came running up to behind me and was willing to scrap on my behalf. And I was like, "Chumbo, you're the best." But that was like, and actually I'm glad it happened because you get to see the true colors of, people, of course. But then at the same time, it just adds to the lore, the story, the lore of Nazaré. Like we want these exciting moments. And, I guess if you're doing a good job at stuff, people are going to attack you for it.
Yeah, for sure. And just something about like, that the idea of just the world's biggest wave, it brings a lot of emotions out. And I think that's why the drama there is at such a
it's emotional
fever pitch every swell.
It can be life or death. It's survival and, tempers and, the thresholds that people can contain. It's a lot less there. And so if you can keep your cool amongst all the chaos, you're in a good place as a person. But yeah, no, it's just that's the territory that comes with it. And we'll be back soon.